So the first thing you want to grab is 2 cups of whole wheat breadcrumbs. I just used whatever was left over in my pantry, basically just using up whatever ends that I had. For some reason, nobody likes those little end pieces of the loaf, but this is a perfect opportunity to use that. So go ahead and place that into a large pan, and in a separate large pan you want to have 2 large eggs that are just beaten really well together, and we're basically creating our breading station. So we need some dry, being the cornstarch with the salt, and just make sure to measure out the salt in your hand so you don't add too much, along with 1 tablespoon of granulated garlic, making sure there's no salt, not garlic salt here, and then a little bit of spice, a little bit of kick, some cayenne pepper, and that's optional of course. And just stir that around, and like I said earlier, this is going to be our dry, and then we're going to dip it into our wet, being the eggs, and then again in the dry being our breadcrumbs. So that way we have a nice crunchy coating on the outside of our little chicken nuggets. And I always like to prepare, anytime I'm cooking, I like to prepare all ingredients ahead of time as much as possible. And that includes 3 cloves of garlic. Make sure they're nice and large, hefty cloves. I love garlic, but of course you can omit it, which honestly, I would not do that. You can't have like Chinese inspired cooking without garlic and ginger, scallions. Those are like the mirepoix of Chinese cooking. So go ahead and just set your garlic aside, mince it up really finely. And then you also want to have 3 large scallions, and I like to peel back that really like slimy outer layer, similar to like a yellow onion, so just make sure to do that. And you want to have 3 large scallions that are nice and washed clean, and I do like to add the scallions at the end that you'll see later just for garnish, but like I said, it's nice to have everything prepared ahead of time as much as possible. That way you're not scrambling, at the end. And then also half a cup of green bell peppers. I'm just basically using up whatever I had left over in the fridge before it went bad. So go ahead and just use however much green bell pepper that you like. You can, obviously when you're cooking, you can ad-lib ingredients as you like, so you don't have to add it, but it provides a nice crunch and, sweetness from the peppers. And alongside our green bell pepper, you want to have also half a cup or so. I'm not really sure. I don't really measure when I'm cooking. I'm not exact, because you can taste it as you go, and kind of just estimate basically based on your taste. So also add, equal portions of red bell pepper, again for color and sweetness. And then once you have that all cut up and diced, you want to also dice a large yellow onion. So we're using the green scallions, which is of course a type of onion, along with the yellow onion. But I like to cook the yellow onion just to soften it until it's translucent, and it really adds sweetness to whatever dish you're making. So make sure to add it. And just chop it up into a large rough dice. Well, not too rough. You want, for the most part, whenever you're cutting vegetables or meat, whatever you're cutting, you want it to be equal, uniform size, so it all generally cooks in the same time. And I'm adding it to the same bowl that I'm adding my bell peppers, so that way I can just throw them all in at once. So for our protein, we're using 1.5 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken breasts. Make sure that it's skinless as well, because that way we cut back on the saturated fat. But fun fact, chicken breast is naturally lower in fat because compared to chicken thighs do most of the work. They help the chicken run and walk and stand, so on and so forth. And therefore it needs more fat and more energy because there's more calories per kilo for fat than there is, protein or something like that. So the breasts don't do much work, so they don't require a lot of fat or a lot of energy to do work. So that's why chicken thighs are inherently fattier than chicken breasts. So fun fact for you. But otherwise, we're just going to butterfly our chicken open so it's a nice even layer. Pound it out if you have to make sure it's nice and even throughout, and then cut it into even sized pieces. Then just go ahead and dump your little chicken nuggets, little chicken golden nuggets, into your cornstarch, and I like to use some sort of spider or strainer. Once I place it, using my chopsticks, I like to basically toss it around in the strainer to remove any excess cornstarch. We don't want too thick of a cakey layer, So go ahead and just toss them around. And then once that's done, go ahead and just dump it into your egg mixture. This is just normal breading procedure if you ever breaded anything. And just go ahead and toss it around. It's nice to have chopsticks so that your fingertips don't get very dirty. After your chicken pieces are thoroughly coated in the egg, you want to toss them into your breadcrumbs and make sure to really press those breadcrumbs in to make sure that it adheres to the chicken and doesn't come off while it's baking. And like I mentioned, we're going to be baking off our chicken nuggets, little chicken pieces, so they're nice and crispy in a really hot oven. And that way we don't have to deal with the mess of frying, and of course all that added grease is not good for our health as well. Then for sesame sauce, or I guess orange chicken sauce, I don't know what it's technically called, but either way, you're going to take some pure sesame oil. Make sure it's toasted sesame oil, like the dark kind, because that way it has a lot more flavor to it. And then just place it over about medium heat and add your onion and bell peppers, green and red bell peppers, and just stir them around. I like to add a little bit of salt at this point, and again, just be mindful of how much you add, just maybe somewhere between 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon or so. It's helpful to measure out in your hand before you do that. And then to that, I'm going to add about an inch or so knob of ginger. Just grate that straight in. I like to grate it in, that way I remove all the fibrous bits of the ginger, so nobody gets to chew on a fibrous bit of ginger. It's not very pleasant. So then at this point, it's safe to add our garlic that's been minced up. And I like to add my garlic later when, it's a little bit safer, so to speak, because the garlic has a tendency to burn if you're not careful. So having those other ingredients in your pan really helps. Then you just want to add about 1 cup of water. And it's going to bubble vigorously at this point, but don't worry. And then we're going to start adding our seasoning. So that includes a little bit of soy sauce. I'm using light soy sauce here, about 1 tablespoon or so. But truth be told, there's no such thing as low sodium soy sauce. It's still pretty high in salt. Just be mindful. And also about 1 tablespoon, 1 to 2 tablespoons or so of SHAOXING wine, which is a type of Chinese alcohol or liqueur. And also 2 to 3 hefty tablespoons of honey, just to give our sauce a little bit of sweetness and that really nice shiny glazy look to it. And also just a quick splash, a quick hit of sriracha or whatever favorite hot sauce that you like, along with some orange zest. So about a zest of 1 orange to make things nice and fragrant and really enhance that orange flavor. And at this point, just lowering my heat because it was a little bit hard to control. And also the juice of 1 orange. So it's about 1/2 cup or so if it's a nice juicy orange. They don't call it orange chicken for nothing. So once it's at a very vigorous boil, I'm just going to add my cornstarch slurry. So that's just 2 tablespoons or so of cornstarch mixed with 2 tablespoons of cold water. And make sure anytime you're using cornstarch that it comes to a nice boil. Boil it for about 3 minutes or so. That way you know your cornstarch is nice and thick. Or your mixture, rather, is nice and thick. Thickened by the cornstarch. Then, of course, just add your chicken and toss the coat. And I love to add some white sesame seeds here, just for some visual appeal. And it looks nice and tasty there. So if you like this recipe, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. I really appreciate it, as well as subscribe for new videos and new recipes every Tuesday and Friday. I'll see you back here next time. Bye.
Mmm. Oh my God, it's delicious.